All right. Um, Welcome everybody to today's episode on antimicrobial resistance and aquaculture. It's going to be a great time this afternoon to learn about what is antimicrobial resistance, how does it affect aquaculture in Nigerian aquaculture industry. So antimicrobial resistance has been a campaign to be a global pandemic, and we are getting closer to this pandemic day by day. Something needs to be done, especially in the part of aquaculture sector. There are ways in which aquaculture sector contributes to antimicrobial resistance, in which we need to find measures, we need to define measures to actually approach this. So we are going to be starting in the next 5 minutes, but then we have our speaker here with us, who is Femi Dairo, the business head at Reed Labs, who is going to be taking us through things around antimicrobial resistance, what we need to know, how it affects the Nigerian aquaculture industry, and especially around what are things we need to do to mitigate against letting this pandemic happen in aquaculture, in the Nigerian aquaculture industry. So just give us about 3 minutes to 5 minutes. We are going to start proper and introduce the speaker to us. Thank you as you wait. So as you are joining us, kindly type your name in the chat box and where you are joining from. So let us know your name and where you are joining from in the chat box, in the comment box. Just type your name and where you are joining from. So those that joined, thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. We are going to be starting very soon now. We already have our speaker here on this live event with us on how AMR, which is antimicrobial resistance, affects aquaculture industry. So kindly drop your name and where you are joining from. Let us meet you. Let us have an interaction with you. All right. Welcome everybody once again on today's show on antimicrobial resistance and aquaculture. So thanks for joining, Mr. Femi Dairo. Can we meet you? So we're about starting now. Can we meet you? Let us meet you. Introduce yourself and tell us a little about you before we go ahead.
Right. Thank you, Samba. How are you doing today? Okay. My name is Femi Dairo. I'm the business head at Trade Labs. It's good to be here. Samuel, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I hope that we learn and share some thoughts together. Right.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. So You are here today on the issue of antimicrobial resistance, and I know that you run a laboratory right here in Ikorodu, Lagos State, and you have been doing so much more in promoting food security and achieving sustainable aquaculture with some farmers around there. So tell us, how has it been? What are the issues you have noticed around antimicrobial resistance from your experience so far in the industry and with farmers, what you think they are doing?
Okay, Samuel, thank you very much. First, currently we're having issues with farmers really diagnosing before treatment. So we have to put in a lot of work to ensure that these farmers understand the implications of not diagnosing before treatment and then using drugs without diagnosis is a costly, very costly endeavor. So I think this is the sneak peek into the real challenges we're having. Well, we have also had issues with getting the right talent at the farm level, and then we're still working on that. We're trying to ensure that we get young people trained and then attached to these farms. Thank you, Sam.
All right, sir. So we are not going to waste much of the time today so that we can go on into the big deal. And I believe you have much more to teach us or to tell us today around antimicrobial resistance and aquaculture. How does this really affect aquaculture industry? So are you ready, sir? So that we can start.
Sure, sir, please.
All right.
Okay. I don't know if the audience can see the screen now. Please, if you can see the screen, kindly let us know. Right.
So the screen is visible now.
So I want to be sure that everyone is can see the screen. Please, if you can see the screen, kindly indicate that you can see the screen.
So from my end, it's visible. I can see it from
Okay.
the back.
I don't know if the audience can see the screen, so we have to be sure that you can see the screen. If you can see the screen, kindly let us know you can before we start. Okay, go ahead, please. Go ahead, please, with the presentation. All right. My name is Seth Dyer once again, and I'm going to be sharing my thoughts, my findings, and bodies to give a form of way to go and then help us to understand the basic concepts of antimicrobial resistance and as it affects the aquaculture industry in Nigeria. Please proceed. Okay, so first let's lay a foundation on the objective of the session so that all of us can clearly be on the same page. And then if by chance I didn't respond or I didn't meet any of these objectives, also call my attention and draw us to it at the end of this session. Right. First, the first thing on the objective is all of us will be on the same page on the purpose of aquaculture. Second, we look at some key statistics, some figures here and there, globally, Africa-wise, and then Nigeria. Number three, we're going to look at the growth of the Nigerian aquaculture. Is it growing? Is it stagnant? What are the challenges in the from the disease angle and the disease point of view of the challenge? Antimicrobial resistance in Nigerian aquaculture. And then number six, we look at the way to go. Let's look at whether we can chart us along the way to ensure that we have security and safety, especially around our protein source, which is fish. Okay, yes, please. Okay, so first, I think I need to set a foundation on the significance of aquaculture to the global industry, to the global populace. First, before now, before aquaculture started, it used to be fishing in the wild, and then using different equipment and bringing fish to our home. Still happening. And aquaculture has been a huge gap in the capture fishing. So now there is something called the maximum sustainable yield in the fisheries management that determines whether we should do fishing or stop here. Aquaculture came into play to balance what we are caught, because the catch now becoming reduced with the effort. So scientists found out that the more effort we put into capturing fish, the lower the yield. So that's one of the reasons why aquaculture came into the picture, just to ensure that people are now able to enjoy the benefit of it. So research went into it, and people started culturing fish on major water bodies, and then also backyard settlements that we have now. So now fish is not just a protein source, but also a very important source of all the vitamins and essential, and also some minerals. It's very important. Some for brain development, the selenium, iodine, the zinc are very important for protein synthesis. Apart from protein, fish also supplies the very essential vitamins that we need in our body. Right. So this is one of the very key things I feel that we should all note. Fish is not just about protein; it supplies all other very essential minerals and proteins that we need, vitamins and proteins that we need. All right, next. So if we have to be correct, if we be accurate, we must also look at the global trends. First, in the last Sophia report, that's the state of water, agriculture and fisheries by the Food and Agriculture Organization, usually is an annual document that comes out to show us what the state of what global aquaculture is, aquaculture and fisheries is. So basically, there are global trends now showing what the trends look like and what all of them. First, let me also say that since I've been in the university, I've been reading, studying Sophia report, that state of aquaculture. China has always been on the of that chapter. Since I've been an undergraduate, I have seen China taking the lead. Look, seeing clearly China is giving other countries changed positions, but China has maintained this first position. Basically, because of the population in China and the 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 taste board of the citizens for fish. And from the data we've seen, there is something called the per capita, meaning that the quantity of fish that is consumed in the nation per person per year. That's what we call per capita consumption of fish. So now, per capita figures is showing on the screen, showing clearly that China has maintained its top position, its number one position on the list. So I tried to bring you the data of the top five. This is a fresh update. This is the current result. So this is really very to note and look at. So from the report, I was able to see that India is consuming as much as they are producing. Okay, or losing exporting some of other countries that remain relatively stable against consumption. Most of those countries are eating what they are producing. Right? And so the progress we have seen. Now let's look at the top five in Africa. Now the top five in Africa also similarly to China, I have seen also that Egypt has maintained the number one position in the country. Egypt has maintained its number one position in the country, and I think that also as I mean, as we want to say it's unbelievable or something, Nigeria also has maintained the second position in Africa. I mean, for the past 6-7 years now that I've been looking at the reports, I've seen that also Nigeria a production in number two place in production in critically. However, I think that Nigeria is number three, and then we don't consume as much as we produce. So basically, for me as a Nigerian, I know that people still consume a lot of imported fish, the one we call frozen fish. Still consume what we eat. Obviously, um, previous slide. Obviously, Nigeria is producing but not consuming what they are producing as well. So if we have data on the third in 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 Africa. First, I want to also say that I think that from my observation, I observed that the culture she also determined the position of those countries. First, Egypt is occupying a very critical spot, which is because of the economic political now the couple. So those guys, they are major producer of the because that's fish found in the Nile River. So and they are very prolific in things that they produce naturally and a very, very large number on their own without artificial. So all the countries that produce, I mean, very unusual. They taste board for catfish, and then catfish keep growing. Now, the growth of aquaculture in Nigeria has remained on. However, we are still consuming below, we are consuming below the global average of 20 kg per year per person. So each person global average 20 kilograms. So basically, we have seen that the production, aquaculture production in Nigeria has remained on a steady increase. Been growing Relatively, the per capita consumption has been moving along, but there are conditions, differences here and there. So I think that more, now that more Nigerians are eating what fish we are producing in Nigeria, I mean, more attention has to be paid to it. That's why the fact that the issue of antimicrobial resistance is a global issue. Several countries all over the world are also facing the same challenge. Now, let's look at the real challenge, the challenge of disease in Nigerian aquaculture. Like I have said, it's a global issue, right? Disease outbreak happens everywhere and anywhere in the world. But then the management, the level of expertise in those countries vary. So, first, disease won't happen if the management is accurate. Because I would show you how that we are talking about bacteria in particular. Bacteria is found everywhere and they can grow anywhere. They don't even need a living host to maintain their stand, right? Unlike parasites and viruses, right? So this issue of the management, we lack the capacity in Nigeria. Currently today we have a very few number of fish health professors, and then many of the graduates are mostly not interested in fish disease, and probably because of the way the capacity gap that is there from the academic side and all of that. So if we pay more attention to ensuring that the impediment of this is a major impediment, nothing we can do about that. It would happen at one point or the other. We need the capacity and the technical know-how to manage the disease issues. And then the challenge also is around the fact that most of the time, I think it is arguably so that most of the producers of fish in Nigeria are not experts. So, practicing aquaculture in the country, majority of I can make it about 90% only a few are the experts. So this is also affecting, and these guys are responsible for the tons and the tonnage of fish production we are seeing. If we say that the disease situation will show up, how prepared are the non-professionals to manage the disease? And we run a quick survey some months ago to see how farmers want to diagnose. Now, we discovered that most farmers take co-farmers' advice, meaning that farmers ask other for ways to meet their. So it's purely copy and paste there. So we are trying to also see how we can bridge that gap. Now, in Nigeria, there is an issue of misuse and overuse of these drugs, and these are critical issues. Now, some definition terms to also set us to make progress. The next slide, please. Okay. So I would talk about antimicrobials and their modes of action. The reason why we're talking about this is because this is the current conversation for today, antimicrobial. And before we go into the resistance, we need to look at the definition of terms. So all of us now microbes. Microbes is the first definition on my list. Now, meaning that microbes are everywhere. Everywhere. They are found everywhere, include the bacteria, the viruses, the fungi. A clear distinction. The next one would be antimicrobial. Antimicrobial agents are actually designed to either kill or slow down the growth of these microbes. Next one, the antibiotics, antifungals, antiparasitics, antivirals. Let's make it clear. all antimicrobials are not antibiotics. So basically, antibiotics are responsible for addressing bacteria. Antifungals are responsible for addressing fungi. Antiparasitics are responsible for addressing parasites. Antivirals are responsible for addressing viruses. Now, there is menace of the fact that people, when people, of course, because people have not been able to diagnose before treatment, they apply antibiotics for everything, without even knowing what the case is. So, if you use antibiotics for a virus case, it will not work. So, antibiotics is strictly for bacteria. Now, if you use antibiotics for a fungal case, you don't get any result. Use antibiotics case, you will not get result. Use antibiotics for virus case, you will not get any result. So, we are going to narrow down this antibiotics. First, I think bacteria are found everywhere. Ubiquitous. They're found everywhere. They can grow on any surface. They don't need a. So we are narrowing it down because antibiotics is also most commonly antimicrobial. Now, antibiotics can be in two forms. They are presented in two based on the action. Antibiotics are either bactericidal or bacteriostatic. Bactericidal means it kills the pathogen or the bacteria completely. But bacteriostatic means it just stops the growth of that microbes. Now, these antibiotics are either natural antibiotics or synthetic antibiotics. Antibiotics that are actually produced with or from microbes, produced from microorganisms. Some of them are usually very, very there are natural bacteria in our system that usually does and has antimicrobial. So scientists have been able to so penicillin, for example, is a drug that was made from penicillin, and then it's the synthetic are usually chemical based. One of them is your, I think, your ciprofloxacin family now. So I mean, chloroquinone, that's the family of drugs. Now we look at the issue of resistance. Let me define resistance from illnesses. So in the real world, that's in the application. Resistance is the ability of bacteria to survive or grow during antimicrobial treatment, even though they are to grow and develop what they are doing. In research, resistance is defined by the presence of genetic change, meaning some of the pathogens that you have, some of the microorganisms have developed a genetic code. This is one of the things we call the ARGs, antibiotic resistant. They are present in many of the bacteria. So they have been able to develop into something they are the same pathogen. They are the same E. coli, for example, they are the same streptococcus, they are the same Romonas, they are the same Brucella. They have been able to mutate to their form. I mean, it's just like trying to say somebody has now become fair, somebody has now become muscular. Now, in the laboratory definition, we say resistance is the ability to or grow in higher antimicrobial than other bacterial strains. For example, some of us use drugs, we overuse these drugs. They say use 3 milligram per liter of water, or use 3 milligram per 1 kg of feed. But you use 6, you use 4. That's overuse of the drug. And then even use that level of quantity, it will still not do anything. So let's move on. Basically, from another point of view, the next action we are looking at is the antimicrobials and their mode of actions. recall that I mentioned that antimicrobials are very, very important. They are work against these pathogens. Now, the funny thing is that when you are using a broad spectrum antibiotics, there are antibiotics that are narrow spectrum designed for specific type of pathogen or specific type of bacteria, specific type of microbes. They are designed to work to address only those, while we also have those who are broad spectrum antibiotics. So those broad spectrum antibiotics will wipe off anything on its way. Now, before we before I go further to describe this bacteria daily work to do. They have different work to do. So it is also very important, beg your pardon, it's also very important that we understand some of the ways in which bacteria work. Now, microorganisms also reproduce. Microorganisms also eat. Microorganisms also in their environment, right? So if these microorganisms do this, then antimicrobials are designed to be able to stop them from accessing those basic body functions. So what these pathogens do, and what these antimicrobials are designed to do is that they are designed to stop kill the bacteria that's bactericidal. And so this is very, very important for all of us to note, right? So that is a very, very critical issue. This is very important. Um, Resistance is something that all of us.
All right. Thank you very much for that, sir. So we are going to be having a quick short break. We've received so much input that there are much noise around. So we are going to try to reduce the level of noise and know what is actually happening. Sorry for the inconvenience. So we are going to be back in the next 2 to 3 minutes. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us again. And we are still on the talk on antimicrobial resistance and aquaculture. So, all right. So, sorry for the inconvenience before about the noise inconvenience, and we've learned about the issue, and going forward, we are going to ensure that that noise inconvenience is being reduced to the minimal level. So thank you very much, Mr. Femi Dairo, for that insightful teachings on antimicrobials mode of action, how how that it has been a challenge in the aquaculture sector. So this is the second phase, and we are eager to learn more about how to approach it. What are the recommendations around how to solve this issue in the aquaculture sector? So you can go ahead now, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Samuel. Um, the I think I stopped at antimicrobials mode of action. Right? So this there are basic work that even antimicrobials or and microorganisms themselves they perform. They eat, they reproduce, they grow. So antimicrobials are designed to some of them are designed to ensure that they are not able to feed to eat. Some of them are designed to destroy or interfere with protein synthesis, right? So these are critical functions that determines the survival of the pathogen. So what the drugs do is that they breach those body functions, and of course they will either die, they will die eventually, or the growth is impeded, right? Next, I think we are on the rise and dangers of antimicrobial resistance now. Recall that I mentioned that we have majority of the practitioners in the industry are not professionals. They are basically business people who are interested in the business of aquaculture. Unlike the practitioners, our counterparts, or I would say our colleagues, veterinarians, who are who have worked very hard to regulate the livestock industry and the avian practice, such that there's no way you raise birds or raise some animals without consulting a veterinarian for it. So I think we also need that to be done in the aquaculture sector in Nigeria, such that we need more trained persons. There is a huge capacity gap that we are at our own side are working very hard to bridge, right? So aquaculture now has become a menace to all of us because we have seen clearly that at farm levels, farmers use antibiotics without diagnosis. Now, what we have seen is that even when we want to diagnose, most farmers don't wait until the result is ready. I mean, because it's a crisis situation, you really cannot blame the farmers. It's a crisis situation, and the farmers need to take action. But of course, the animals would have shown signs before the actual mortality or morbidity that we are seeing on the farm. So, literally, it becomes a case of a crisis situation for the farmers to now say, okay, I want to wait for test result to come. So what we are trying to do now is to bridge this gap, ensuring that farmers have at least one technical person that can notice the signs, and then also we bring farmers together to show them what the signs look like, how when this happens, this is what you should do. So we have worked very hard to ensure that that starts happening now, right? Well, there are factors contributing to AMR, antimicrobial resistance in aquaculture in Nigeria. First, as I mentioned earlier, is misuse and overuse of these drugs, of antibiotics. Misuse, an example of misuse is someone who was supposed to use antibiotics that is using antifungal or using antiparasitics. So then that is one. Then overuse is about the fact that they say use 3 milligram per liter. You use 4 milligram or you use 6 milligram. So that's an example of overuse of this drug. And this is responsible for ensuring that these pathogens mutate very fast. Pathogens will learn, pathogens are learning very fast how to stop the drugs from working. Pathogens are learning very fast how to stop the drug from working. Are we learning as much as we should learn? If not, we are in big trouble. And I'm not trying to scare you. That's actually the case. Now recall that there is a case of cholera outbreak in Lagos, some part of Lagos, and the pathogen responsible for that is Vibrio. It's usually it's a marine pathogen. It's found in coastal areas and brackish and marine environments. So these pathogens are also zoonotic in nature. So they are also crazy. They are the ones that can actually lead to mortality in humans. They can actually kill human beings. Now, there is also poor farming practice. Poor farming practice is also responsible for some of the things that these farmers do. I mean, farmers who do not know that water quality is very important, farmers who do not know that if pH is correct and oxygen is not, there is going to be a challenge. And then it will stress the animal and then, of course, lead to susceptibility to these pathogens. These pathogens, most of the fish pathogens are opportunistic, and so they take advantage of the weakness of the animal to now attack the animal. Now, also we have an issue of lack of regulation and then oversight. Now, there is no major regulatory body doing that in Nigeria as of today. There is really, I mean, there should be some stop gaps into it. If you must do this business, this is what you must do. This is the minimum you must do. For example, it might just be that if you have a fish farm, you must have at least one qualified person that is an aquaculture scientist, aquatic scientist, or an aquaculture professional who understands the water quality and how that should be done. Then the next one would be, and of course, you know that there is no enforcement. Even if there are laws, there are no enforcement. So these are the issues affecting us. Then limited surveillance and data collection. First, in most sectors, data is an issue. Most farmers, most industries, most ministries may not necessarily have the current data or say updated data of the current realities of the farms. And if they do, there is no going concern in the level of data that is gathered. Right. So if we say that we have the data, how current is the data? And so we must all commit to that as professionals in the industry, as farmers, when they come to you, present those data in good light so that we can use those data to make decisions to ensure that all of us were safe. I think the next one would be the dangers of AMR to the rise of AMR in Nigeria. When AMR sets in, and I know for sure that farmers are seeing it now. We have seen some cases in the lab here at Tree Labs. We have seen the cases of farmers bringing in samples, new kind of disease, some of which farmers are not familiar with. They are beginning to see them in their farms now. Now we have increased fish mortality as one of the issues. You will just see a very new disease case. You will not be able to tell. You will not. In fact, some of them you will not see any clinical sign. You will not see anything, any mark on the fish, nothing. You will just notice that this mortality persists, right? And so this is a major issue. The one that looks like it is reduced productivity. Now, when from the knowledge and from the perspective of fish nutrition, your fish has basic work to do every day, and then once those job is done, I mean, like swimming, like eating, respiration, nutrient absorption. Now, when there is a stress, when there is a disease case, some of these nutrients is used to fight the disease. Most of the enzymes, most of the antibodies are protein in nature, and some of them they utilize all the nutrients to also come to being. Now, if there is a disease case, the pathogen, some of the nutrients from the feed is also used to fight disease, and so productivity would be reduced, and also, of course, the farmer is going to be losing a lot of fish. Then the next one that looks like it is the high production cost. Eventually, when you need more feed than normal to be able to address it, because you have lost some uh, to mortality. You are also not just feeding for growth, you are feeding to also manage disease situation. And of course, the cost of drugs, because you will have probably used a drug that is not needed because you didn't diagnose before treatment. So using a drug that is not needed is also a loss of resources and waste of time. Now, I think that it's also the danger of AMR also boils down to an impact on livelihoods. Some people are actually major on producing fish, so their livelihood is at stake. Those whose only source of income is aquaculture, meaning that they will not have a level of revenue until they go to farm and do all they need to do. So if AMR is the case now, where we have resistant gene transfer and we have antimicrobial residue in the tissue of the fish. Now, let me quickly say that there is something called withdrawal period in the use of antimicrobials. That is the period it takes for the drug to wear out. So, for example, if you use the drug for 5 days, you start counting the withdrawal period from a day after the last dose was used. And then most of the drugs you will see it on the body, the withdrawal period, some of them will be 12 days, some of them 15, some of them 52 days, depending on the type of drug. It's always written on the veterinary drug. So you will see that withdrawal period. That means within that withdrawal period, you cannot or you shouldn't sell the fish to a consumer. Meaning that if you do, that person, the consumer, is consuming a less dose of that drug. It applies to all animals, both poultry, pig, anywhere that drugs are used, they have to actually watch out for the withdrawal period of that drug. Now, if AMR persists, there's going to be increase in disease transmission. And this is a critical issue, and all of us would have to pay attention to this. Diseases are transferred from farm to farm. Resistant genes are transferred from farm to farm. Resistant genes are transferred from animals to humans. As long as you consume those animals, there are places where they still eat live fish that is not cooked, right? So that antimicrobial, antibiotic resistant genes can be transferred from person to person and from animals to animals. Okay, we can move on. I think all together there is a risk of human health. I have mentioned that some of these pathogens are zoonotic in nature, meaning that they can transfer disease from animals to man. And this is a serious issue. This is what we are trying to guide against. I think that we are not talking about this enough, because if you notice, even in human medicine, that there are certain drugs you use over and over again. After a period of time for malaria, you will discover that that drug will no longer work, probably because the parasites have built resistance to that drug. And then there's also drug resistance that the body itself also is used to certain drugs, and then the pharmacodynamics and pharmacokinetics of that drugs is out of place. Now, strategies to combat AMR in Nigeria, I mean, if we know the problem, is just to find solution, right? So basically, it is very important for us to use antimicrobials before we should use antimicrobials only after a diagnosis has been performed. So it is important to make prudent use of antimicrobials. We are making our effort to educate farmers and trade labs, and trying to partner with Aquaculture to also bridge the gap of talent gaps, in that ensuring that farmers do what they're supposed to do part time next. And I think that is also key for us all to for government, from the government side, on the association side, on the ministry side, on the department, MDAs, ministry department and agencies, to have current and updated data. These data, we have to make conscious effort to get them. In the lab now today, we have a very, very robust data system that we're using to collect data. And of course, we have seen some behavior of some of these pathogens and how they behave. And then we have been able to keep the relevant data around that. The next point would then be monitoring and surveillance, as I mentioned. And I think that if we're able to get this data, it will help us. We need more veterinary laboratories here and there, just so that we can address this issue, because it's not something that one person or one diagnostic center can say you want to shoulder. So it's also very important for us to have veterinary laboratories here and there, and enforce that diagnosis before treatment becomes the order of the day, so that we can protect the health of the populace. Next, I think the last one would then be alternatives to antibiotics. There are now alternatives to antibiotics. Now in Nigeria, we have not started fish vaccination yet. Our scientists have been working hard on that, and then we also need that some of these vaccines are developed using local indigenous material to ensure its effectiveness. Because in vaccine now, if you don't maintain a proper cold chain, you're going to be having vaccine failure. So that's another one. But if also we have the issue of we have a way forward in probiotics. Probiotics are like microorganisms that confers gut health. That's the gastrointestinal tract. Once you consume probiotics, these pathogens will grow. This microorganism, rather, I mean to say, will grow, and they would confer on you the health benefits from them. So there are specific microorganisms that are good microorganisms. So we can say that these microorganisms, when consumed, can confer health benefits. Like the lactobacillus, some of them are present in our yogurt, some of them are present in other food items we eat. Consumers of vegetables also know, those who eat fruits also know. It will stimulate the growth of the good bacteria in our body, right? Then bioremediation is also very important. I think that there's also an environmental factor, because once you use antibiotics on your farm, where do you dispose the water to? Now, if you have to dispose the water, how do you dispose it? There is also treatment that has to go into it to ensure that the water you are releasing into the aquatic environment, into the environment, to your drainage, to your streams, to your rivers, are also free of antibiotics or lesser dose of the antibiotics. These are critical issues. Now the critical issues that we also have to pay attention to is the direction of the recommendation for Nigeria. I think being a professional and what I have seen, having worked with farmers for over a decade, I think I know for a fact and first hand that first, the issue of technical know-how must be addressed. We also must encourage that young graduates who are in the country are also empowered to practice what they have learned in the university, in the colleges, in the polytechnics. It's very important that we get young people. We are also working very hard to get the attention of the presidency, get the attention of FAO, get the attention of IFAD to draw in the right network. We have some level of relationship with WISH today, and then we've been able to partner on capacity development one way or the other in that. So sustainable farming practice is key. It's very important for us in Nigeria. Second would be we need a national and international collaboration. Gone are the days of competition. I think we need to really partner with ourselves, organization by organization, across the value chains, to also be able to address this issue. It's not one thing that one person can shoulder and say, I am this, I am that. It is a collaborative effort if we must secure the health of our population, right? The third one is the policy development. Now, if you are developing policy, I think also that farmers must be represented, the technical, the academia, the veterinarians, the industry practitioners, those who are in the stakeholders of the industry must be involved. I think we have started a very great one. We had a meeting with the Minister of Marine and Blue Economy some 8 weeks ago, and we had a very quality interaction, and we hope that the Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy will also be able to draw on this information that we gave at that meeting and that stakeholder engagement, to be able to also further the way forward, and then collect this data. Some of this data are with us here. We have the data in real labs here, and then some of those data also we are willing to share with government to be able to make informed decision. And then we also need some partnerships from the government, either through a PPP arrangement to be able to develop this policy and ensure that we have a good direction, and also investment in um, equipment to assess antibiotic residue in food, and also know the certain disease identification and have a database for some of these pathogens. I think at this point, I I think at this point you can end this session and then take questions from there. If we can take questions, I think I can end this session at this point.
All right, thank you very much, sir. That's been a very much wonderful session. So we have quite some interesting questions to ask you, just as a follow up on what you've discussed with us so far. And the first one is that someone asked that bacteria show AMR. Does increasing the dosage of antibacterial drugs every time the infection shows up really solve the problem of their resistance? Does it really solve the problem of their resistance?
Okay, so I have mentioned something similar in my during the course of my presentation. That look, increasing the dose does not have any potency on the pathogen. It only makes the pathogen stronger. That is basically called overuse of the drug. Now, there is a potent drug for a particular antimicrobial pattern. The only problem we're having now is that we are, the options are becoming very, very narrow. We are finding it more difficult to get more potent drugs to use. Almost all the first line of drugs that you know, your tetracycline, your ciprofloxacin, your um, amoxicillin, your penicillin, are resistant to some of these pathogens. So what is important is that you look before you leap. You have to know what works before you go and apply the drug. So there is a system in the laboratory we call the antibiotics sensitivity test. That's what we do. We try to use that to mimic the pathogen. We subculture the pathogen and then use that pathogen, try out certain drugs on those pathogens in the lab. And then after that, we'll then be able to know which one will work. Then we'll come up with a line of action to be able to address that pathogen. So in a nutshell, meaning that even if you increase the dose, it does not mean that the drug is going to work or address the pathogen. So don't increase the dose. Please diagnose before treatment.
All right, thank you very much, sir. That's 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 absolutely okay. Someone said beautiful delivery. Yeah, thank you, Abiola Drojai. Yes, so you have to diagnose before you treat. You don't have to increase the dose at every infections you face. Maybe it's becoming more rigorous. You have to diagnose to know the exact and the absolute level of dosage you should apply. So someone asks again that when there is antimicrobial resistance, what then is the pharmacological solution? Pharmacological solution.
Okay, so when there is an issue of antimicrobial resistance, there is always at least one drug that will work. During the antimicrobial sensitivity testing procedure, we also check out some drugs that can work, and we try to give you the one that best address the issue, and then we ensure that we monitor the use, and that's what we do at our own level. So pharmacologically, all you need to do is to know the type of drug know the type of pathogen before the type of drug. If you don't know the pathogen, if you think that the drug you used yesterday, maybe for example, maybe a case in maybe a case of egbrocellosis, for example, caused by Egbrocella pylori. If you see the symptoms might look exactly like an Aeromonas or like a Pseudomonas or like what do you have again there? Flavobacteriosis. It will look alike until you carry out necropsy that is trying to understand what actually is the cause before you can know, you can narrow it down to this is the cause. So it's very important for all of us to also know that regardless of what it is, you must first diagnose before treatment. And that's a very key component of this. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, sir. We have another question. So the question is there any way I can join your fish health team? So someone is looking to join the team.
Okay, there is a partnership between Aquaorg and Read Labs now to be able to um, train talent in courts. So what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be exposing these young graduates to the real life challenges, the real life cases. Some of the cases they read in the book, you will see them live here. And so we're going to be hosting some of them. So some of you would be interested can apply through the link, and then we'll be working with us here and understand some of the issue. Work on the farm, work in the lab, so that you bring that expertise to bear where you are attached to a farm. So we're working on that, and I think that the after today, the application will be open for all of us to apply and participate.
All right, so a follow up on that. That means that there is a 6 weeks internship program coming up after this event, and the link to apply is going to be sent across both on our platform. And please, you just need to follow up. So it's going to be an on-site 6 weeks internship program where you can learn more around fish health. You are going to work with the farm, work in the laboratory, just to see this issue yourself, to learn about this practical wise real life situations. So another question would be, okay, want to know more about AMR. I think on that we can share the slide after now so that you can actually go through the slide to know more about AMR. Then when we share the slide, you are going to see the contact details of the speaker where you can ask questions. You can reach out to take more advice on what to do when you are facing these challenges of AMR in your farms here and there. So another question is, would you provide these certificates for participating in the event? Of course, no, you are not providing certificates for this event. This is just a free webinar where you just have access to learn one or two things about that. In the future, we are going to be coming up with programs that is going to get you certified. Just like this Aqua Health internship is going to come with certifications program where you are going to be certified on learning certain issues both from Reed Laboratories and Aqua. So we are going to be getting certification from two organizing bodies that can actually vouch that yes, when you are approaching other firms about you being an aquaculture health personnel, you can have something to show them that you have actually worked with the laboratory, you have worked on farm to learn about these issues and how you can approach them. Please, does the lab accept serious students? Let me allow our speaker to answer that.
Of course, we have interns in our laboratory. We have we have been taking interns, and so you don't just have to apply and send in your CV and cover letter. Then would work on that. I think we are receiving interns here and there, so I think everybody can apply. The link can be shared also if you send email after the interview, after the session. Once the slides is shared with you, you will see the contact of the laboratory there. You can then chat and make inquiries.
Okay, this is Abiola saying if we want farmers to stop applying antibiotics, we need alternatives that will ensure sustainability. So I think, and that has been spoken about. So can you just give more insight, sir, on alternatives here and there so that we can just have a recap on that?
Okay. First thing is fish health management at farm level. Your fish is water. Water is your fish. Basically, all you need to do is first understand what are the stressors, what are the factors that are responsible for the fish to come down with an infection or disease. Right. Once you know that, if you can ensure um, sustainable management practice, ensure that the oxygen is good, ensure that the pH is relatively stable, ensure that water quality parameters are stable. Then if they are not, then you would need to address the issue. You would need to address the issue based on water quality management. If by chance the disease now gets in the line, then you diagnose before treatment. We are not saying don't use antibiotics. We are saying diagnose before applying antibiotics and ensure that you observe the withdrawal period. These are the key issues. So we're having the issue of antibiotic residue and we're having the issue of antimicrobial or antibiotics resistant genes. We don't want these genes transferred from man to animal or from animal to animal or from farm to farm. And so we are saying use this drug as prescribed. Now, also, I've heard cases where farmers say, but you say we should go and use as prescribed. If somebody that asks us to double the dose, we are saying that it is not all these guys that you see around that are professionals. We have some quacks here and there also. So now you have to go to a reliable space and ensure that the people that you are talking to know what they are doing. So we are equipping you with this information so that if somebody tells you to double the dose, you know that this person is a quack, right? Thank you.
All right, so we have a quick question. Thank you, sir, for the time, sir. This is from Dramula Israel saying, do you have data on any bacteria that you have isolated for further research? We can't see you. We can't see you. We can't hear you too. We can't hear you. All right, so there's a little break there. Let's wait for our speaker to come up again. Okay,
Can you see me now? Okay, great. So for isolation, well, there is there is a limited time to which we can store or keep any pathogen here with us because of the health implications. So after the research, after every analysis, there is a certain way these pathogens must be disposed, and that's what we are doing now. So if if you have any interest in furthering any research, then you can always make requests and come around. We can give you an isolate, one of the pathogens to work with. Then that is not an issue at all.
All right, thank you very much, sir. So we just take two questions more so that we can end the session for today. So we have maybe I'll just make them together. Will this cover BAP in the use of medication in aquaculture? I'm not sure that question is clear. But then said, um, we have how does drug used to treat fish affect human after consumption?
Okay, great. How does drugs, right, used to treat fish affect
Affect human.
human after consumption? Now, I mentioned something about withdrawal period, right? There are some drugs that are on the list of very important drugs. It's on the WHO list of very important drugs. Um, there are some drugs on that list that I don't want to mention now because of certain things, but I think I should mention it. Levofloxacin, right? Levofloxacin. Some of the drugs, some of them are very important, and they are on the very important drug list. So if you use that drug in veterinary practice, and then the person who used it did not observe withdrawal period before selling off the animal or the fish to the market, then the person is probably going to consume a lesser dose of that antibiotics, meaning that the residue of that drug will get into the body of another person, and then the pathogens who which that drug is supposed to address in human would have learned how that drug works because it came at a lesser dose. So the day the person is sick and has to be in the hospital to treat, that drug will not work. And we are not even sure whether we'll be able to get another one to use. So these are very critical area to look at.
Okay, so we have the last question. The last question here, and that would be, what are the plants containing antimicrobial properties that can act as an alternative against synthetic products in aquafeeds?
Okay, so let me say that almost all drugs have mode of action, your synthetic or your natural antibiotics. Just the way you have a way, the road you go from your house to your school to your work, that's the way drugs are designed to work. They have their pathways where they work, where they move to address it. Some of these pathogens have now learned to even release poison on the pathway and then destroy the drugs. Some of them have built resistance, built live now learn how to live in cocoons. Now there are drugs. There are plants with antibiotics properties or antimicrobial properties. Many of the drug contains phytochemicals. Phytochemicals are plants rich in these chemicals that has antimicrobial effects. So if you have your Azadirachta indica, your neem leaf, for example, that's your neem leaf, your Moringa oleifera, that's Moringa leaf, Moringa roots, Moringa stem. Depending on it, our forefathers have also enjoyed that in the past. They have used it to treat malaria, to treat typhoid. So the same way, I think we need more research. I've seen some couple of papers on Moringa oleifera and the effects. I've seen on as a neem leaf, as a director indica. I've seen there's a leaf they call it Akintola. I don't know the botanical name now, but these are very important plants. They are called botany of economic crops. There are economic crops that offers or that are loaded with antimicrobial properties that we can always leverage on. I mentioned it. I think I've mentioned two or three now, right? So you can always have them. There is a lot of research that has to go into it. Then look at the pharmacodynamics and pharmacokinetics of those agents, and then build doses. Dosage is also very important for us to note. And so if we can work on that, I think we can head somewhere.
All right, thank you very much, sir. It has been an insightful session so far, and I can see Mohammed said this is a great dive into fish health and nutrition. People are saying thank you so much for an enlightenment session, beautiful delivery, valid information, great exposure. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. We really appreciate you for joining, and we hope that you have learned one or two things today on antimicrobial resistance and aquaculture. The goal of this is for you to have an idea of what to use to approach your farm going forward, right? So when webinars like these are coming up, it's not just to come up for coming sake, but then for you to have a new approach towards your activities on the farm. Of course, we are coming up with trainings after now that you can apply for as an aqua health intern, where you are going to learn these disease cases firsthand, both on the farm and in the laboratory. So this will help us, even challenge the issue of zoonotic diseases coming from the area of aquaculture that is affecting market fish disposal for market opportunities here and there. You see, the reason why when we sell our fish out of African continent and it's been rejected is because of people are not aware about this residual period when they use antibiotics. And of course, globally, they are sensitive to this. And if you check out up there, you see that antimicrobial resistance is a global pandemic at the moment. So how we contribute to it in the aquaculture space is the area of the antibiotics, the antivirus, the anti-fungi, the anti-parasitics that we use when we face disease cases on the farm. So by using the actual dose, by diagnosing before treatment, we can actually know which kind of antimicrobial should we use for this particular disease. So if you need more professional advice on fish disease diagnosis and management, you can reach out to Reed Labs. So they work majorly around sustaining animal health around the Ikorodu, Lagos here, and you can go to their website on readlabs.readagri.com or call 07018387005. After now, the slide is going to be shared both on our platform, on Aquatals, Pescademy. Just follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn, and you're going to get access to this slide being shared up there. If you have other questions, other queries around antimicrobial resistance or around internship program, you can reach out to us via our social media platform, or you can send us an email. You can find these details on our social media platform. So thank you everyone for joining. We are going to say goodbye to everyone now. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you. Bye.